What's going on, ladies and gentlemen, saints and ain'ts, and welcome to Lactic Acid. I'm your host, Dominique Smith. Today, I have a certified baller shot caller. I should call this the Canada show because she is like the fourth Canadian I've had on this show in 2023, and she is just as good as all of them. She owned her college. I'm looking up the stacks. Literally, they need to take it from Queens to Julie College because that's how dominant she was, and she's doing the same thing on the running trail, on the running courses, on and off the track. She is none other than the legend that is Miss Julie-Anne Staehli. How you doing, fam? Appreciate you coming on the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be on.
Hey, that's what's up. Listen, we only have greatness. So I was just thinking about that as soon as I press record. I was like, dang, I have had like Canadian greatness on my show. Like what is life? So basically, since we are headed into spring, I have to mix up the questions that I usually ask. So let's just say the good people at the Grammys, as well as Food Network, they were having dinner one night. And they said, we need to promote the awesomeness of an athlete who epitomizes awesomeness. And so they said, what about this Julie-Anne character? What about her? She seems pretty dope. And they looked at the history and they're like, oh, for sure, we're going to make a custom promotion centered around the great things that you do day in and day out. So what they're going to do for you, and Ben and Jerry's has to be included on this too. They got left out. They were waiting for an Uber, didn't happen, didn't make it so, but they're a part of this. So what the Grammy said, we want to literally and figuratively roll out the red carpet for her. So she gets to attend our award show with any music artist that she chooses. The whole red carpet, you get a presenting award, but you are going to be the plus one of the artists that you choose, your favorite artist. Food Network said, we want to create a custom burger, pizza, or if there's a go-to dish that she cannot live without, we are going to make it. We are going to put it on every menu that we are affiliated with in the world. We're even going to make Guy Fieri, the mayor of the mayor of Flavortown, put it on his radar, and we're just going to do it big. So you have to pick between that. And then Ben and Jerry's wants you to create a custom ice cream, 2 flavors, and they're going to combine it into one ice cream that they're going to sell every freaking where. So what's needed from you for the Grammys, the artist that you're going to the award show with, Food Network, the either custom burger, pizza, or if there's just like a dish, like, no, this is the dish that I cannot live without, that has to be on every menu, and then the 2 flavors of ice cream for Ben and Jerry.
Easy, easy. I would
Uh-oh.
go accompanied with Nicki Minaj, tacos, and it would have to be mint chocolate and peanut butter.
Oh my God. I mean, listen, I've never gone, I'm almost shook. Nobody's ever answered this that fast. Gosh, you didn't even take a breath. Man. Okay. So I'm actually shook. Wow. So let's Nicki Minaj. Okay. Why Nicki?
I would say it. She's been someone throughout the years, especially running. You're listening to so much music, and I think Nicki has always dropped something that has definitely stayed at the top of my playlist. And it was tough. I mean, I listened to so much and so many genres, and definitely like it's always kind of like, there's lots that I fill my runs with, but I think Nicki, there's always been one of those songs that I can just listen to on repeat, and it was tough. I think Drake was probably a close second there, but definitely, yeah, that would be sort of the guest of choice.
Nicki. Wow. I used to listen. This was my Nicki Minaj pump up song, "Moment for Life."
That's fun.
Like, I don't even know. I'm not even doing anything worth value, but I feel like this is it. Like, I've worked my whole life just to write this article, and stuff like that. So I get that. Drake, that's interesting. Obviously from Canada. Drake has a song for every mood. Like, if you win a race and you just balling, um you just got that feeling. You can just, actually, I would love to see you do that. Just like, you pop out a good 1,500 or a good 5K, and you're just on this high, and you just look at your opponent. I've been down so long, y'all look like up to me. Like y'all look up to me. And then like if you lose, there's like Marvin's Room. So definitely I feel that. Tacos. Why tacos? Because that's a new one. And why tacos, and what specific taco are we talking here?
Yeah, I Taco Tuesday is the only stable thing for me in the week. Like it's pretty much on lock. It's guaranteed. Tuesday rolls around and I know what I'm getting for groceries. So in terms of type, I mean, I'm totally open to different variations. I do usually go with more of like flour wrap tortilla style. Like I would say it leans towards burrito fajita versus like corn style, taco. But yeah, definitely something I enjoy and I never get tired of.
What's your go-to taco? Like tomorrow's Tuesday, but like what if I had to say give me your favorite taco, like what are we putting on this puppy?
I would say I'd probably go with a if it's summertime on a patio, it'd be like a fish taco with all the toppings. Yeah, definitely. Like I love lime, I love cilantro, I love any sort of like sauces as well. So something like that.
How did you get into, and I'm curious because usually people from California are like the taco game. So that's why I'm like, she in Boston. Like I don't know if y'all got like a taco shack, or Canada's a taco hub. But how did we get into the taco game? I don't know why that shocked me. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I would say honestly some of the best tacos I had were probably in California. And I love like anything that's like in terms of cuisine, I would say like Mexican food is probably up there, Thai food. But yeah, I don't know. I think I'm born on a Tuesday, so maybe that's something to do with it. Taco Tuesday. I was just like I was made for this.
She was made for this. Can we get like a sponsorship from like Tijuana or Tijuana Flats or something? I mean, should go back to college. You can get a nice NIL deal. That would be dope. Okay. And actually, you went so fast. So mint chocolate chip was the flavor of ice cream, you said? Isn't that like one flavor?
And peanut butter.
Ooh, okay. Ooh, Lord. Okay. We got to hold up on that. Mint chocolate chip and peanut butter. So because that does not sound good to me, just being honest. Have you tried this before, or is this just like an educated guess?
think I think I just trust my intuition here because
Okay.
mint chocolate, I would say that's the top. Like you can't surpass that. And like I'm talking like the green artificial looking stuff with the
Yes.
not like your quality gelato that's like natural mint. I mean like the
The
like
stuff that look like
lime.
mold. Yes.
Right. So you got that. And then I mean peanut butter goes in anything. So I'm just assuming that flavor is they're gonna come together into a nice ice cream.
You seem like a very optimistic person. Um, because I'm Julie-Anne, I'm trying, fam. I'm trying. I'm thinking of like how can I like a Reese's with like a peppermint Reese's.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe okay. Um I'm gonna trust you. I'm gonna take your word for it. Am I gonna try it? No. But actually, I will say this: if Ben and Jerry's came out with that, I probably would give it a try. Because they would probably make it good. Because you said something that I think does not get the proper respect it deserves. There's all this fake mint stuff, but like I don't know. I don't know. Olive Garden, they give you like these mint chocolates. I don't know if you've ever been there. Um, and I am guilty of like if I'll just be honest with you, then I hope there's no like authoritative police or anything watching. If they left the box out, I'm taking the box.
Mm.
Like but that's like pure mint. You see the green on the back of it, and then obviously the chocolate. Um, so now that we're talking about it, I can definitely see how mint chocolate and peanut butter could work together. I'm gonna go try that. I'm gonna go get some mint chocolates from Olive Garden legally, and a slab of peanut butter, and I'm gonna try that. Okay, all right, I'm okay. This talk has worked. So wow, that is historic. No one has. It's like you knew I was going to ask you these questions. Like you came ready. And like I always say, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. But you in this 2023 season so far, you are balling out. Like you went to New Balance, you put down a decent time there. Then you went to Australia, and Team Canada had a top 10 finish, and you were a part of that. And you are dealing with weird climates of weather to be running. That's just my 2 cents of a dollar. You go from being really hot to being really cold, but the consistent thing is that we can see that you are poised to make a big time run here in 2023, and the results show that. How do you feel your season's gone so far?
Yeah, definitely interesting. I think the indoor season this year, it's less of a focus. I think, leading into the outdoors, there's no world indoors. Cross country was sort of just like, something that was an opportunity. I qualified last fall. So, really excited about that trip. But combining, indoor 3K with a cross country 10K race within, 2 weeks and back-to-back races. I did a 5K in between there as well. It was, you're kind of navigating a lot of different with travel, but also just in terms of the training. It's tough to be specific when you have so much in terms of distance and climate and heat acclimation coming down from altitude. So I think, I had big goals heading into that New Balance Indoor Grand Prix, 3,000 home track. You're in front of everyone at New Balance, the people who are writing your contracts. It's exciting. But then it also brings that kind of a little bit of pressure as well, because now, you want to be able to perform. This is, the closest thing to a performance appraisal in terms of, being a professional. And the 3,000 is one of my favorite events. And every year I've been able to take off time. And this year I didn't. And I think even though, I had a great training block in Flagstaff, it was like, like, am I in, a good position in February at this time of year? So I just kind of like took that performance, flush it. Okay, now we got a 5,000 next week. And that was at, the Magic Track. Everyone hypes it up at Boston University. It's known for PBs. And there's world standard, that would be a great box to check. So 14:57, that's my PB. Obviously it's, it's tough. You have to run faster than you ever have. And now it's indoors as well. So luckily it was perfectly paced. 15 minutes was the goal time. Through 3K, we were 9 minutes flat. The splits are super easy. Every 5K is a K, or every 5 laps, sorry, is a kilometer. And that's, you're just trying to hit those 3-minute Ks along. So yeah, with, I guess, 2K to go, 10 laps is when that gap formed. And then I finished, it was 15:15. And, you feel like you just missed that mark. And, a couple years ago, I would have been like ecstatic with that. Even a year ago, I think that would have been something I would have been, really, really excited about. But yeah, the stakes are just different. And I think now it's, if it's not the best, then it's sort of just another time. And yeah, and then heading into flying across the globe, heading to Sydney for the World Champs. Totally different shift and focus. And now you're running with Team Canada, so different kit. Like it just feels different. And I think these kind of opportunities are really the highlights in terms of like what you remember in the sport, and getting to compete on, another continent, and getting to travel and all of that was just incredible. But definitely, anything can happen in cross country. It was hot, it was hilly. It was designed inside of a race car track. So our warm-up area was the pit. So that was really neat. And they had us go through vineyards and tires, and there was, every surface imaginable. So coming 40th there, top 30 was the goal. But I think, on the day, that was, the best performance that I was able to do.
Well, in my eyes, I still think you've done pretty good this indoor season. obviously you explain, the different nuances and your expectations, but let me ask you this, and this is kind of a two-part question. How much grace, obviously you want to win, you want to do well, but this is a long season. Like, worlds are, kids are going to go back to school. Like, we'll be in school for a week when the world championships start. Knowing that it's such a long season, knowing that it's such an early start in track and field, how much grace can you give yourself? Um, because it's like, okay, maybe I didn't hit it like I wanted to in January, February. Maybe I didn't hit these times, but you know, healthy, and there's just so much. It doesn't mean that because you didn't hit those times early and you didn't achieve the success. Obviously, you just talk about Australia. Um, it's when you're changing climates like that, that's hard because your body has to adjust. I know here in Florida, I always say like we have like low key fall and extremely low key winter, but when that thermostat switches from like, you know 60 to 80, brother has a sinus infection like every day, essentially. So how much grace can you give yourself to maybe ease the pressure that obviously you face, especially knowing that there's such a long season ahead?
It's a great question. I'm just trying to compare. I like last year, I had a great little indoor season stint, and then I got injured. And then, my outdoor season was condensed. So I think, distance athletes have short-term memory. It's sort of like, once you have that next great performance, you don't even think about, what went wrong prior to. And I think that was my fall last year. Finishing, on a big win, having a couple big wins. And, then you kind of forget about what happened before that, because that moment of success is really, that's all you're thinking about. So, if looking ahead, I hope in hindsight, that the indoor season is small relative to, what I'm capable of achieving this summer. And if it means that, I'm not in peak form in February, then, I'll take that. But I think because everything is so, calculated, you do want a performance every time you step on that line. It's just, we're greedy that way. There's, in terms of giving grace, I think it's, you're looking at it as every shot is a chance to run very fast. There's very few races that are just your, rust buster type throwaway. You have those maybe, to do a little proof of fitness, earlier on, but I would say, the New Balance Indoor Grand Prix is a tough way to open a season in
Oh yeah.
terms of being a gold label World Indoor Tour race.
You opening at the New Balance Indoor Grand Prix, living in Boston, being sponsored by New Balance, it's like when you walk into a class. I don't know in your college experience if you've had this, but I've had it. And the professor comes, okay, here's a test or here's a pop quiz. We just want to see what you know. And that happened. And Eminem, Lose Yourself was me. My palms are sweaty, knees weak, arms are heavy. And so I definitely understand that. That's like, I don't know, because everybody's like, "Oh, what you got?" And it's like, man, it's January. Like, chill. Like, hit me back up in August or something like that. Um, and I don't know. You make great points, and it's genuinely interesting to hear because here's me. I'm sitting in a seat interviewing athletes, so my perspective is a little different because there is pressure, especially when you train as much as you do, and the type of training that you do. Um, I still think it'll work out in August. That's just me. Obviously, everybody has mixed feelings about the indoor season, which has been more vocalized this year, obviously with lack of pay. Because some people are like, all right, I'm putting my body through all of this and I'm racing and all this stuff. Is it worth it to like win $500, to do everything? But obviously things, are, as you said, you're getting ready for the outdoor season. But I have one question before we get to the off track stuff. What is it like training at altitude? Because I've told the story before. I went to Colorado on my senior ski trip. I'm born and raised here, still live here in the state of Florida. When I say I was struggling to walk Like I got off the bus, I'm like, I can't breathe. Like what, like how do you people live like this? And I would get winded walking up like 2 flights of stairs. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not athletic anymore. And then I was like a senior in high school. How do you like run in it for like weeks and months at a time? Like I feel like you should get like a contract incentive of like an additional like $25,000, because I'm like, listen, let them people who write the checks go out there in altitude and let's see how they survive for a second. I don't know how y'all do it. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's unique to endurance athletes, and I think it's a weird hypoxic environment that we put ourselves in to get those benefits. So essentially, you're going up in altitude, and the main physiological advantage is to increase your red blood cell count. So there's a few different benefits, but essentially, with less oxygen, your body's working harder, and then we produce more red blood cells. So um, I would say to anyone who's never been, it's all about the recovery more than it is about the training. You have to be able to recover really well. And it's kind of B plus efforts in terms of the work, but like A plus plus in terms of as soon as you're finished that run, it's just like wet sports bras off. You have your recovery, you've got your electrolytes, you get horizontal, you take your nap, you're fueling properly throughout, and sleep and nutrition is very key. And it's quick. I think it's,
Yeah.
you can dig yourself very quickly into a hole in terms of, you're feeling good. You want to make sure you go into altitude relatively fit, because you're adding that additional stress. And I think if you overcook it a little bit in the first couple of weeks, it's really difficult to come back from that during the rest of the camp. So definitely easing into it, never being too proud. If you're at the back of the pack for the long runs, usually there's like 30 athletes who show up. It's sort of the distance running mecca of the world. And you've got Olympians, you've got world championship medalists, Olympic medalists, and all of you are just going for an hour run, and you've got to decide where you want to be in that group. So it's definitely, it's a strange sort of experience. And I would say the thing that made me sort of like realize that it's real, this is not just a placebo effect, is I had drug testing done, I think 3 weeks in, and they arrive, it's random, they knock at the door, they're coming in, and it was blood draw as well as urine. So sometimes they're just taking one sample or the other. But as she's doing the blood draw, I'm sort of waiting, and I'm like, why is this taking so long? And it's slow, and she puts the vial down, and usually your blood, in terms of the viscosity, like usually it's the blood's moving in the vial, and she puts it on the table, and it's like globby, it's like honey essentially.
Ooh.
And I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, and some people do take a little bit of aspirin when they come down, but it's real. Your body is physically and mentally and emotionally changed. I think you come out of the camp sort of a different animal. But definitely coming back down, there's that adjustment, and people respond differently in terms of how you feel. It can be this groggy kind of like slow exhaustion versus some people, they respond really easily. So depending on where you fall, you have to be able to kind of monitor that. And the more times you do it, the better.
Wow. I'm still in that blood story. Like that would freak me out. Like what the heck is this? Like that is crazy. I just listening to what you said, that just affirms the decision. I'm never going to altitude just to walk. Even though I love Colorado, but uh, would you rather train in altitude or humidity?
There are some benefits, actually. They say humidity training is like a poor man's altitude, which is funny because southwestern Ontario happens to just be like the I guess equivalent of Miami. But it's hot, it's humid. I think humidity, what's difficult there is, as your body heats up, it's hard to sort of regulate yourself in a different way. Whereas with, an altitude environment, you're working harder, but it's not just like sweat rate. So I think I would take the altitude. It's fresh air as opposed to my hair just being like crazy all the time.
Oh yeah, you have a fro. Your hair will poof out like a one of those like chia things where like you water it and then the hair. Yeah, that's what happens out here. Like I get up in the summer, uh, go take the trash or go bring the trash up, and I have to change shirts because I'm like drench. I would prefer, here's what I did learn. I prefer the humidity over like the dry air and the dry heat, because if you're in that dry heat, you don't know you're in trouble until you're dead, basically. I know that was very drastic, but essentially because you don't know, like your body like gets cold and you're like, oh, I'm good, and then you have a heat stroke or heat exhaustion. Humidity, I don't wish it. Maybe it's because I'm 28 and I've lived here every single like all my life, so maybe I'm just used to it. It doesn't mean I don't like it. I mean, I find it interesting that Canada can match Florida's humidity. That's interesting to me. I never would have thought. Um, I thought it was just like Narnia up there because like Hallmark shoots all those movies and everything. So I thought it was like this magical place, and then you tell me it's like a swamp. It's like, dang. What are three things that people do not know about the legend that is Julie-Anne Staehli?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, there's a lot out there and it's mostly running focus. So I'd say, the things that I maybe don't share or are more unique to me. I'm from a really small town. I think I do sort of, I put Lucknow, Ontario, and I think most people would just be like, I don't know where that is. So, really small town, 1,200. I grew up on a small farm. I'm here right now, actually. And I think it's interesting because I never thought I'd be living in a big city like Boston. So that's something that I hold really close to my heart, is just knowing, this is sort of where it all began. And gosh, in terms of my uniqueness,
So that's one.
that's one. now, I'm just gonna sound boring, but
Nah.
yeah. In terms of, I would say I've always been pretty, balanced. I think I've always had something athletic, academic, and something, artistic in my life. And I think for me, the academic and artistic piece would be, my education and background in sports psychology. And then I love playing piano. So throughout high school, college, university, that was something really important to me. And I always wanted to be a teacher growing up. I ended up doing my teaching degree. I finished in 2021, and that has just been sort of shelved for now. But my background is in health studies and sports psychology. I did my master's at Queen's as well. And I would love to be able to work with student athletes. I think, working at a university one day would be the absolute dream. I think that's where I could make the biggest impact and just be able to connect with students. And then the musical piece, I think it's not something I can do often, but if I, come home and just sort of like sit down and be able to play a little bit of piano, and that's something I always enjoy as well, and a little bit of chess as well. I would say that would be sort of my
Snap.
outside of
Okay.
planning.
Okay. So was that 2 or 3?
2.5.
Okay, 2. Okay, we have 2. We have another half one to make it to 3. But I got to come back to that the piano one. What would be the last one? None of these are boring, by the way. These are very interesting.
Last one. Well, so my family's dual citizen. So all of our relatives were from Switzerland originally. Both my parents were born there, and then they moved to Canada in their 20s. So my brothers and I were all born in Canada, but now we're kind of between two places. but that's something that I definitely don't take advantage of enough. And when I get to go visit, it's exciting. But all of my cousins, aunts, and uncles, everybody lives in Switzerland.
Oh man, that is so cool. Like, what it made you think your things would be boring? Like, this is like interesting. Um, let's go to the piano first because I've heard you play based on the things you posted on social media, and I listen. You are a very talented runner, and we'll get to the education part. But yo, like somebody orchestra needs that. like some like if not an orchestra, a church choir, somebody like you have like mad skills like on the piano. I had Maddie Price on here and she mentioned that she loved Alicia Keys. And like you are like this hybrid of like Alicia Keys meets Roberta Flack meets like Mozart. Like when it comes to the skill set and what you're able or Mozart and Billy Joel, because Billy Joel slaps on the piano. I don't know. I know my listening audience will know who that is, but what made you pick up the keys?
I started, there's photos, I think, earlier on, kindergarten, and like my feet aren't on the floor yet. So I'm not using the pedals, but
Yeah.
I think it was big for my parents that we had, some musical aspects, whether we, continued on with it. But, my brother played guitar and we did piano lessons throughout elementary school. And then you get to a point and you can start doing the conservatory. So you start taking the exams. And I was, at that point I was kind of like, well, I'm this far. And then I got into it and I was like, oh, frick, I don't know if I want to do this. So then, you're going back and forth. You have to spend at least, a good hour, usually in the day to be able to practice. And then, I got to the point where I'm like, let's just finish this thing. And I mean, it's never been something that I feel like it's, identity. Like it's not something like running, I would say, I think you've given me too much credit in terms of my ability, but it opens up a different part of your brain. And I think it's like, you feel that like when you sit at a piano, it's different than when you go for a run. It's different when you spend time with your friends. There's something that it kind of awakens. And I think piano happens to be something that if a song has an intro with keys, it's just, I immediately gravitate towards that. And it's interesting. I think it's like almost something that is part of you. And yeah, I hope that, maybe one day I can have a little baby grand in my house and, have a cool little setup. That would be, that I know I've made it in life. But yeah.
I mean, we can make that happen. I know there's some piano places giving away pianos. Listen, sponsor sister. Let's hook her up with her own studio. You say I give you too much credit, but listen, there's receipts, and the receipts are on the gram. As we said, and as I was taught in journalism school, hashtag the truth never expires. And the truth is, you are about that piano life. So, I mean, I was like, dang, like, some people are like, oh, I'm pretty good. And then they play, you're pretty good. I'm like, yo, this is legit. I Piano's hard. Like it's tough. I grew up playing instruments. I have sort of a musical family. Whether it's, my uncle, he was a singer, my mom sang, she led the choir, my grandfather he had his own musical group, and I played the drums. And I tried to learn how to play the piano. And after day 2, I was like, nope, 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 nope. Like, I'm not about that life. So, but to your point, there is something soothing about it. Are you somebody that learns by ear, or do you just have to have, the notes and everything right in front of you?
Yeah, no, I'm not intuitive. I'm very, I have a piece of music, I'll hammer it out. I treat it like training, like putting in your reps, do the first line, get to the second line, perfect it. That's how I kind of went through with the exams as well. You had to memorize the pieces that you played. So it was literally like a training program in terms of, how you're approaching that. But I would love to say that I had a bit of natural talent, but most things in my life end up being something where I put in reps. So if that's any insight in terms of personality, but I definitely, I treat things, I'm maybe not naturally talented, but I'll work really hard. I've got
Hey,
that.
ain't nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with that, and it's very rewarding once you get it after putting in the work. So you grew up on in a small town of 1,200. That is small. On a farm. So, so you're kind of like low key a farmer in a sense, just knowing about the animals and tending to them and living that country lifestyle.
Yeah, I think it's just more in terms of your values. I would never say that I'm, in agriculture. I would never try to make that claim that I could, have a farm of myself. But growing up in this community, I think there's certain things that you appreciate. Coming home, there's a freedom. There's kind of this like breath of fresh air when you're able to just go out your door and not bring your keys. You don't lock your vehicle. You're just it's just a different type of space. And I've weirdly never really been an animal person. I like my animals, I like my pets, but compared to my parents, I never inherited that. When I see them, when they handle, and my dad, that's his passion. And I think more so it was just sort of the value, and being able to have a little bit of land and space to grow up, and just being all the time outside. Those are the pieces that I think I've carried with me.
That is, as you're talking, I'm like, because my family has origins in the country too, and Tuskegee, Alabama, and I think they live on farms and stuff. And you're right, it's different. How is it? Not was it, but is it? Because just this is just assumption. It has to be a huge adjustment, like from going from like 1,200 an entire town to like 1,200 on an entire street in Boston. How have you adapted to that big city lifestyle, and how have you brought the country mentality and values and lifestyle in a sense to adjusting to the big city?
I would say, I mean, I went to Queens and Kingston. That was the first move when I made an adjustment to a city. So I went, from 1,200 to 153,000. I moved to London when I did my teaching degree, and that's closer to 400,000. But now Boston, I never thought I would live in a city. Toronto was never somewhere I wanted to live, but then the opportunity came up with New Balance, and I didn't really think about it. I didn't really, I kind of went into it without, really conceptualizing in terms of like what this meant. And obviously living in the US, it's a totally, you're adding different layers in terms of culture and people. But I think, it's easier than you think. I think going the other way would actually be harder for most people, going big to small, because you're used to having all the resources at your fingertips. And I think you can learn a subway system really quickly. There's there's certain cultural shocks in terms of what I grew up. It was just, I didn't have much exposure growing up, and that's something I realized going to university in terms of diversity. And I think that I definitely missed out on, and I'm happy now in my life that being in a city that has so many different influences and getting to spend time with people that you wouldn't if you just stayed, in your small bubble, growing up in your hometown. So I would say, in terms of what I would bring to the city is a little bit of naivety. I think my level of trust is different, I think, than most people. I don't immediately think of what could go wrong, or what someone might do, or the negative side. I think oftentimes I'll hear my teammates talking about something, and I'm like, wow, I never thought about that. Like that could be dangerous. Or you should put a password on your phone, because if someone steals it, they have all your information. So
Yeah.
recently I just put on Face ID and a passcode, which it sounds silly, but I
Uh-huh.
genuinely, I just it's not something where I felt like I had to kind of be a bit guarded. And luckily where I am in Boston, I never not feel safe. I usually tend to run during daylight, but even if it is, sunset, I usually just, find an area that's decently busy. So yeah, there's a lot of differences. I don't think Boston's going to be my forever home. I'm not sure where that's going to be, but I would say I'm pretty adaptable.
It's always funny to have or to see big city people go visit the country for the first time, because there's a couple things that, and it makes it's hilarious to me. uh when that sun goes down, it's a different kind of dark. Like it is. I was in Tallahassee, and it's like 8 o'clock. um and my mom was like, we were visiting, um and yeah, it's my mom or something, like, oh, we left something in the car. I was like, yeah, we're gonna have to get that in the morning. Like I like, it is like, I can't, like, it is a different kind of dark. And then once it gets dark, you start hearing stuff and everything. So those are always kind of the funny little aspects to me. But when you're not balling out, running, training, and I'm always interested to hear with distance runners, because distance running is very like the stuff you do per day is all centered around running. But how do you find that balance? What do you do to step away, from the sport when you're not, training, competing, practicing? Some people like to cook. A lot of distance runners have come on the show and said, we love reality television. I don't understand why. But what is that for you?
I feel like I'm still kind of finding that a little bit. It's different right now. I think I've really given myself this sort of like, you know, 16-month span looking towards next summer. It is really all in. So running is your number one priority. I think there's, this assumption that you have all these hours in the day when you're not training, just do whatever, but it ends up being filled like very quickly. And I would say between the travel and the competing, it's, I've only spent 11 days in Boston this year. So I would love to say I have my morning routine and all my little activities, but the reality is half the time I'm looking at, my travel schedule, how I'm packing for the next month. When I come home, I'm planning appointments and just catching up on, it's tax season. So right now it's like, okay, I need to get my financial pieces in order. But yeah, like if, outside of the team and outside of just our training hours, I love, if there's a coffee shop, I can go spend a couple hours, just catch up on some emails or, spending time. I usually always try and connect with people at home. If I'm not physically here, I like to always just be able to check in. And yeah, I would, cooking, I wouldn't say, it's more out of necessity. It's not so much my number one. I'm trying to get better at recipes. That was always my favorite part of training camp and Flagstaff is, everybody takes a night of the week and just, they're the chef and then they cook for everyone. So I think I've got a bit better grasp on, some good meals, but yeah, overall, I would say I spend a lot of my time just sort of like organizing my life so that, it puts me in the best position possible to train really hard. And yeah.
So I feel like you've got it. If you're balling out cooking tacos like that, I think you're good. So that's the one. The slow cooker is your friend, because all you have to do is throw some crap in that pot and let it cook while you're on your long run, and then you have a meal for six, or for 6 days at least. One thing that, and I was looking it up. Let me make sure that I have it right, because granted, well, I'm not even going to say that, but I want to make sure I got it. You've like won awards and like grants and like scholarships and like all these honors over the past few years, not just for athletics, but for your prowess in education and teaching and everything like that. Which is just, when I was reading through it, I was like, yo, like, wow, this is like Nobel Peace Prize worth of kind of stuff. What is it? why do you love, and it seems like I could hear it when you talk, you have a passion for teaching, a passion for helping others. Where did that come from? Especially, since you would like to help student athletes, where did that passion come from?
Early on, I think when I played, as a kid growing up, I was always the teacher. It was like totally imaginary, but I was always, Miss Staehli, and, had my little bears all set up in terms of, my classroom. And I think with teaching, there's certain like qualities. Organization is something I'm like very passionate about. It's just things that are, orderly. But then I think more into the education side, it's in terms of just learning and knowledge, and just, having an environment where you feel like you're being challenged.
Right.
That is something I always love going to school. I always love being a student, and I always love my teachers. So I had a great experience. So I think that just kind of carried me all throughout elementary and high school into university. And when you have that type of experience where you're sitting in a classroom and you're like, tell me what I don't know, show me, or, explain to me things that I don't understand. That gives you a totally different kind of view of the world. And, I think a lot of students, unfortunately, we don't reach them. We don't get to that point where they're excited to learn. And it's more just this sort of, I have to go to school. And for me, that was very different. And I think all throughout university, running was kind of a one-to-one in terms of my education and my athletic side. So I guess I just decided, I want to continue pursuing. So I continued on with my master's. And because you're so involved in the athletic department, and because I was a student athlete and I saw the resources available to us and what was lacking, and then making that transition into professional sport, I think there is a gap there in terms of, student athlete wellness, and specifically in mental health. And I think with my health background and, my experiences at this level of, competition, as well as, just in my master's, I did a lot of high performance coaching research. So all of that combined has sort of set me in this idea of being able to ensure that like we have the resources available to especially first year athletes transitioning into university, because there's so many life changes that you're going through at that point, personally and professionally, and just that adjustment period. I think it's important to have good people who can help guide those athletes.
I saw you mentioned this. I saw a tweet, and it was a video by a rapper by the name of Plies. Um, and he is involved. I think he was a collegiate athlete, and he said something interesting when you're talking about the mental well-being of athletes. He told parents, you need to call these kids and check in on them to see how they're doing mentally, because these coaches, a lot of times when they're feeling the stress and they're feeling the pressure and they are, crumbling, they're taking it out on these athletes who already have, you know, school and, different things going on. Um, and it's just something that doesn't get talked about enough. And it's something that doesn't get addressed. I guess the way I want to phrase this, I feel like there has to be a trust factor um, in everything, for an athlete to really open up, like, hey, I'm struggling with this, I'm trying to, be tough and all of this stuff, but there's a lot going on. How do you feel like, if you've thought of it, and just alluding to your previous points, in this next venture of education, like, do you think, I don't know. And that's why I'm curious. How do you feel like now, from an arbitrary standpoint, that you could eliminate that stigma and really make a difference? Is it like, because you're an athlete, the stresses you've dealt with, certain things, you've overcome a lot of things, but I'm curious how it would work. Like, would you have like your own school, or would you be like the traveling Billy Graham, just helping athletes, at a time, or a mentorship program or something of that nature. Have you thought about that, as far as potential off the track stuff? Obviously, after you've won a few gold medals, and stuff like that at the Olympics and everything.
Yeah, I think, being in an institution, at a school, in a department would probably make the most sense in terms of impact. I don't know what it would look like if you were, working at different schools and sort of going around. I think then you would be your own, you would have some sort of business or some sort of service that you would be offering. And I think I've had those big sort of ideas, and it seems like sort of a dream, but in terms of what that would look like, obviously there's been so many reports in terms of sexual abuse and suicides at schools, and that immediately, just every time I see a Twitter post or something like that, it's just I just feel like we're missing something, that's just like absolutely avoidable. And having lost my oldest brother to suicide, and then thinking about my experiences at university, and thinking about what that means for students living on their own for the first time, and for parents to have their kids go away to school for the first time, like this is just like of utmost importance. And similar to something like climate change, this feels to me like something that's just so immediate and necessary. So I had this idea, I think this was maybe before I moved to Boston, before the pandemic, and there were these cases coming out. There was a huge allegation. So at Guelph University, there was a misconduct in terms of a coach and an athlete, and it completely blew up. And I think something so close to home, and knowing athletes who were impacted by that, I was like, what could be in place? And I think we've made that shift, but not prioritizing the safety of athletes ahead of success is just doesn't seem right to me. And having some sort of screening process, it needs to be a third-party investigation that is holding universities accountable in terms of their coaching, and making sure that athletes have someone that they can speak to and report to. We're making those shifts. I see, what's happening now, but it just feels like we're so late to the game with that work. So, you're not going to be a pioneer in that. There's always people who are experts, and I don't think I'm ever going to be able to, head something like that. But at least, if I can, post retirement and just thinking about, career life after sport, that's where I see a place that I could be helpful.
You may not, be a pioneer in it, but the impact of normalizing, having an advocate to talk to is just as impactful. Because listen, if you save one, then you've done a great job, and that can inspire hope. And it's cool that you have the power to affect change, and obviously looking forward to seeing you save the world in that regard. A couple more questions, and we're going to wrap this bad boy up. Why is a pair of shoes so important? And this is regarding your work. And I want to make sure that I got it right. The ReRun Shoe Project. Why is a pair of shoes important to you?
Everyone needs a pair of shoes, I think. And I'm not thinking about running, just thinking about, every day. I think, it's a form of, ability to be able to, get to where you need to go. And, when I think about, if there's people on the streets, if there's, shoes are usually one of the things that growing up, I noticed, if someone's shoes were completely wrecked, I think it almost says something a little bit in terms of, where you place value, but it's, having a pair of shoes that are intact, and that, it completes an outfit. I am a bit, a sneaker snob now. So it feels a little weird to say that, because, I get shoes for free and I switch them out, every month. So I realize, that I'm coming from a totally different place. But I do think it's an absolute priority. And if that's one barrier to physical activity that I can help kind of address, then that's important. And that's where we started the project in 2016. I made a personal donation to, it was a youth sport organization in Kingston. And I was like, wow, I didn't realize, that, a pair of shoes, maybe no longer, in terms of use for training, but we said, like, giving shoes another life to improve the life of others. That was sort of the motto. And from there, we've just been able to expand. And now, we're in 5 cities across Canada. There's no real goal or objective for the project. It's really just it started organically, and it's still organic. But it's just important, and it's so simple, but I think it is effective in terms of, providing and recycling and being able to repurpose, or I guess reuse shoes for in communities, and making sure that that's local and not just, sending them all over, but within specific areas.
I will post, if there's a link that people can, I need to make sure to get that, because I will post that in the show notes so that people please support. Listen, a pair of shoes, if you have health issues, you don't understand how impactful a pair of good shoes can do. It can solve hip issues, it can solve back issues, it can solve, foot issues and everything. So yeah, I will definitely be sure to post that link in the show notes. Last 2 quick questions. We talk about mental health and the importance of it, and obviously your work and trying to advocate and make things easier for student athletes and for people as well. How do you make sure that you stay at bay, if you will, to protect your well-being and to protect your mental health?
Yeah, it's I guess the motto for me has always been healthy, happy, and then running fast, in that order. So my university coach, when I was struggling, that's what he used. And I think in terms of that priority, nothing else matters beyond, your physical and mental health. So that's number one. And for me, that's been working with a sports psychologist, checking in bi-monthly usually, and just even outside of sport, making sure, how are we doing? And, if there's something that's stressful, okay, we're talking about it. And then, we figure it out, and coming up with those coping mechanisms. And, there's so many different pressures, but I think when you really look at it, it's, sometimes things aren't really that big. And sometimes things, it's just, it can be, turned into something that just you realize is not that important, or, maybe it is really important, but you just, you've been struggling with it because, you haven't been able to have a little more perspective. So, yeah, keeping a good sense of humor has been very important. Never taking your work more seriously than the people around you. Like I think that's just like so important, especially when you're doing something that feels very self-centered. Running is it's a selfish professional sport to get into. You're your own business, your own entity. It's self-fulfilling in terms of sponsorships. You're promoting yourself. So that definitely weighs in terms of your mental well-being, and just how you cope. So definitely having someone to be able to just like let share and be able to work through with is awesome.
Last question. What brings you joy, whether it's on the track or off the track?
Oh man, I probably like the simple things. I always say, like, going to bed at night looking forward to coffee in the morning. Like it's just the little things, knowing I'm gonna have, espresso machine ready for me to make my morning coffee. And spending the last 2 weeks traveling in Australia, like that just felt like, once in a lifetime. But I just love being close to water. I love, when we get to finish our runs in the ocean and just swim and just think like, if this is it, this has been incredible. And I think that it just definitely brings me joy. Anytime that I can run along, whether it's just the reservoir in Boston or the waterfront somewhere, that's been really awesome.
And how do you keep that perspective? I know I said last question, but you just made such a great point. I just have to get this last one in. How do you keep that perspective when you go through the ups and downs of the sport? Because maybe, your perspective could help somebody else that's struggling.
Um, I think just give yourself the space, whether it's success or failure, whether you have that high or that low, give yourself, that 24 hours, feel it. And then it's a new day. You wake up, this day has new potential. And no matter what you're going through, it's like, this too shall pass. Like it's going to change. There's always things that are, it's going to be different. You're going to feel differently. And just hold on to that sort of constant that you're capable of so much. And if it's not, just falling into place right now, even though you've had the best training, but the race isn't exactly the result. It's, the good times will come, and just have confidence in that. I think everything's going to come as it may. So yeah.
Wow, it's deep. Start calling you Pastor Julie. Dang, Pastor Julie-Anne. Dang, preached a sermon on that last one. All right, you have survived the interrogation process. Now we're going to go to our very last segment called Down the Home Stretch. I'm going to ask you just a couple rapid fire questions, and I want you to answer them to the best of your ability. If I stop to ask you to elaborate on the answer, doesn't count against the time. If you do not answer these as fast as you can, I don't really care. It's all good. Like we always say, all thriller, no filler. That's how we roll on this show. Are you ready?
Oh, I've always been ready. Yeah. I'm good.
Oh, snap. Okay. Listen, as I said, stay ready so you don't have to get ready. And so she's ready. If there was a food that you could live with and a food that you could live without for the rest of your life, what would they be?
With ketchup, without mayonnaise.
Ooh, okay. I'm gonna do you a solid because I was like, I want food, not condiments, but I will do you a solid. Ketchup and mayonnaise. Okay, we will do without ketchup and mayonnaise. What is the last movie that made you cry?
Peanut butter falcon.
Okay. Explain that one to me. Like, I've never heard of that. Who's that?
Heartwarming and hilarious. A boy with Down syndrome. He's in a retirement home where he's not
Oh,
supposed to be.
okay. No, no,
And
no, 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 no. I'm not trying to start crying on the show. We're good. All good. Let's go. What is the best season that you've experienced?
Summer in Australia.
Okay. All right. If you had to go see anybody in concert, who would it be? That's not Nicki Minaj or Drake.
Lumineers.
Ooh, that would actually be a really fun concert. I'm not even gonna lie to you. Dream vacation spot.
Christmas in Hawaii.
Melekiliki Maka. I like that. There we go. All right. Let's just say they were going to make a movie about your life in your hometown. Who do you want to play your character?
Oh, I don't know. Um, Blake Lively.
Oh yes, that would actually be really good. That would actually be pretty good. Okay, if you had to have dinner with anybody, not dead but living, anybody, who would you have dinner with?
Michelle and Barack Obama.
Okay, I love that. I love that. Shout out to Shell and Brock. All right, if oh yes, if there was anybody in this world who could narrate a race that you participated in, who are you choosing?
Oh gosh. Somebody with a good accent, probably. I think it'd be funny if my parents did, because it could be they definitely have an accent, but it would be interesting what they would commentate on.
like a 1500 or something like
Yeah,
that.
it would be emotional probably. But I think it would be funny if they kind of co-commentated in terms of who got the microphone, and if they were able to be objective in terms of the entire field. It'd be interesting.
I would love, I would love for parents to commentate, because I know how I would be. Whenever I have kids, it would not be good. It would be entertaining. It would be legit. All right, last couple of questions. Last television show that you've binge watched.
Breakpoint on Netflix.
Okay, let's say this. And I do mean if they were going to come out with a custom shoe in your name, what is the color scheme that you want? And what would the name of the shoe, model of the shoe, be called?
White, cream, beige, very classic court style shoe. The name of the shoe would be maybe just, I don't know. My favorite number is 3, so it would include a 3. My nickname's Jules, so a combination of that.
The Jules 3000.
Jules 3000.
Yes, and it's a neutral shoe made by New Balance. I like that. And then we could have like the Staehli 1500. Has a nice guide rail for anybody. You see, that's what we're doing. We're making moves. All right, last question. Why does kindness matter to you?
I think it's all that really matters. I think being kind is, it's the most important thing. I think if you're walking down the street and you can flash someone, just smile at someone. I think it can change a day. And if we can do that, then we're winning.
Jules, you have survived down the home stretch. You have killed it, baller, shot caller, doing big things. Where can the good people listening to this find you? Where can they support your journey?
Instagram, J Staehli. I created a website as well, so jstaehli.com, and just recently started a monthly newsletter, the PB&J. So if people are interested in just little updates on adventures and what's going on, definitely check it out. It's on Substack, so you can search it there. But yeah.
Whoever did the design for your website and the logo and everything, well freaking done. That was like a masterpiece. I was like, yo, this is legit. So shout out to whoever did that. PB&J. What went behind PB&J? I love that.
I think you're gonna have to read my first newsletter because
Okay, no, never mind. Never mind. We can't give away secrets. I was just curious, but listen, that's okay. I'm going to read the first newsletter. I'm going to subscribe. We're going to put that in the show link or the show notes as well. Julie-Anne, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy life to chat with me, and I hope everybody enjoyed the episode. We will catch you next time.